Good evening, everybody, and thank you. I love actually seeing, and think we all enjoy seeing a lot of people in our audience, so thank you for being here on Monday, May 1st, and happy May Day. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and have Mr. Weaver lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we gather, we are grateful for today. We are grateful for colleagues and for community. As we engage in the city's work, let us remember the trust and purpose of service, the meaning and value of relationships, and the purpose and importance of discourse and public input. Above all, let us be thankful in accordance with our own faiths and practices for the opportunity to give back and lift our neighbors and neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Angelou.
Here.
Bowers.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Padova.
Here.
Renner.
Here.
Schnetzer.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Excellent. Item B, additions or corrections to the agenda. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none. Hearing of visitors. First up, we have a student, Michaela Barb Cox, Take Action Project presentation.
Good afternoon. As he so lovely introduced me, I am Michaela Barb Cox. I am currently a senior at Gahanna Lincoln High School. I also participate in the Delaware Area Career Center Zoo School program. This project was created in partial fulfillment of the Global Scholars Honors Diploma requirements. However, I just felt that it was something that could benefit us all, regardless of what project it may be for. The project itself, of course, focuses on air pollution. When I was going into 9th grade, I had the opportunity to participate in a ambassadorship program in which we acted as ambassadors to several Chinese students that were in the US for a couple of weeks. And at the end of the week, I asked each of them what their favorite thing was. And every single one of them said that their favorite part was how blue the sky was. So when I was presented with the opportunity to make a change through a project, that is what I chose because it was so dear to my heart. Anyway, enough about me. I'm sure that's not what you're here for. Air pollution is caused by a variety of things. The thing that we go to first, of course, is car exhausts and things. That is mainly PM 2.5 particulate matter. Well, that is the most popular or common type of air pollution. There are a variety of other types, including PM5 and PM10. PM 2.5 particulates are responsible for more than 20,000 deaths of children under the age of 5 annually, and more than 200,000 American deaths each year. So obviously, it's a major issue. It changes the environment. It kills plants and trees and animals and people, and it changes what we see. We can go from seeing a beautiful blue sky to only being able to see gray and dark and dirty, something that no one wants. Okay. Whew.
It's tricky.
Okay. The World Health Organization has rated air pollution as the world's largest environmental threat worldwide, but also on an independent and national level. It is the thing that we most need to address, even though it's widely ignored for changes, for things that seem bigger and scarier, like climate change, which air pollution actually contributes a lot to. The main ways that we can create change as individuals are just raising awareness, educating yourself on what you can do Is carpooling a better option for you? Is there a lower emission way for you to get where you're going? Also, things that we don't tend to consider, such as where we get our clothing and other materials from. Are you shipping it all the way from Timbuktu to the US? That takes a lot more emissions than something that's locally grown, locally made. Another major part on a individual level, but I guess for you on your job level, is voting and influencing people in power, whatever they may be, whether it be corporation leaders, leaders at your school, the city council, making change where you can and influencing the people that can make bigger change that you can, and voting responsibly. Vote for people who want to make change for the better instead of pushing it off until someone else and pushing it off until it swallows us whole. Thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Barb Cox, thank you very much for that presentation. If you notice on the wall behind some signage that we have a scroll from the Chinese students, those were gifted to us in 2013 so before the pandemic, we worked with the schools, and we used to have the Chinese students come visit the city and understand what local government does and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that you said resonated deeply with me is that I too heard that comment commonly from these students. They just were in awe of our blue skies, and therefore we got to talk about the EPA. So, all right, any other comments? Thank you again. I do have a set of speaker forms up here. If you were late to coming to council, it's not too late to actually fill out a speaker slip. You can find them in the rear of our auditorium or up at the council clerk's desk, and we'll just need your name and idea of what you want to talk about. Under our rules of procedure, when I call your name, come forward. You will get 3 minutes to speak, and I do ask that you state your name and your address for the record. Nancy Snyder.
Hi, my name is Nancy Snyder. I live at 249 Farm Creek Drive, Gahanna, Ohio, Ward 3, Section C. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm here to ask for your help, actually, for myself and my neighbors. Turns out we have invasive calorie pear trees. We've got a lot of them. And unfortunately, a lot of them are in our right-of-way. So I've talked to our neighbors, and it's fairly unanimous. It's too difficult to go through all the permitting process and do it correctly to get trees taken out of the right-of-way. So I thought, I can do this. First, I'm going to make sure that it's really a calorie pear. So I called and found out that, thank you, Gahanna, you have a forestry supervisor by the name of Julie Perderi, who actually came out to my property for free, did a wonderful job, unfortunately told me that 3 of them really are these invasives, but thank you for her. Then she went the extra mile and sent me the form I need for the permit. Great, so I started filling it out, and I got stuck because trees are my business, and the other ones all want to have the date for the work so they can come out and do it. The permit wants to have the date that they're going to do it first. We're stuck. Each of you want the date that the work is going to be done first. I can't apply for the permit because I don't have the date. I don't have the date because I don't have a permit. I'd like to get rid of the calorie pear trees. Please help make this process easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lee Tucker.
Hi, I'm Lee Tucker. I live at 805 Nob Hill Drive West, Gahanna. I'd like to talk a little bit about the display in public property that's going to be coming up on your agenda. it was really a nice segment that you have a Gahanna student here giving a presentation, because part of it is I also am the chair of the Gahanna Parks and Recreation Foundation, as most of you know. We help support the schools and art murals and different things that they do with other arts and throughout Gahanna. And for the past 3 different times since, I think, 2007, and then now, I think there's 3 dates. This is the 3rd time the mural underneath the bridge has gotten done. And it's all been done by the schools. It's a great project for the schools to do. They're all learning this and getting everything's doing. So I know that there's a lot of discussion that has been presented about this, that, I think that this year, it's the school's project that does this. It's our kids that are doing this. It's a really nice thing that they do. It is the current sign of the times what they do. I know that there's also things that you have to look at with who gets to put things up and who doesn't on personal property. It's different than when it comes to public property. And I think that, being this is supposed to be put up in a couple weeks from now, it's, important to look at this going forward, not in the immediate time, but in that going forward is what do you want to do, is have a policy. What other cities have policy, not just do this off the cuff and do this real quick and everything else. The students deserve to have this done, put this up, because they've done this year and they've worked hard on it. And I think that that's something that you should address and going forward and say, certain things shouldn't be up there, and if you let certain things go, then other things have to go up too. But again, this should be based on the students picked this and did this, and who's going to be saying something against the students. I think, again, they do a very good job of working this. The teacher that's organized, that's retiring. It's a shame that she has to go through turmoil in the last year that she has this, but I think that, going forward with this would be prudent for you guys to do, and then going later on and after that is looking at it and having a set plan and look what other plans are out there to do that. I mean, there shouldn't be vulgar stuff out there. There shouldn't be different things that people don't want to have on there, or that is political, or that is insensitive, that type of thing. But again, the students have done it this year. They didn't really have anything set. Nothing was set by the city before, so I think it should be left alone this year and go on forward from there. That's my take on it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lee. All right. Third one is Rose Hawk, please.
Hello, I'm Rose. I live at 611 Camilla Lane. I have always been a resident of Gahanna. I'm a proud product of Gahanna schools. More specifically, Mrs. Eisenhausen was my elementary art teacher who had a monumental impact in my life. I wasn't really prepared to come here and speak tonight, but I just wanted to speak to all of you and remind you that in the unfortunate sometimes climate that we are in, where LGBTQ plus people's lives are being threatened and terrorized even blocks away from our own city in Gahanna, how important it is to have a space that is accepting and honoring of all people, especially public art and more importantly student art. I think that's really exciting. And just to think that if you at all even promote or protect that ignorant space of hate, that it really sends a message to your community and your students and your LGBTQ plus members and community members. And that message is disappointing and extremely terrifying for people. Just some statistics that I wanted to remind everybody of on LGBTQ plus youth, which suicide is the second leading cause of all youth ages 10 to 24, and anyone that is a part of the community is 4 times more likely to attempt that. And even just having an important person, and more specifically an important community, decreases that likelihood extremely. That is cited from the Trevor Project, which is a national resource that you guys can all look into. And I just leave you with, I hope that we would all choose to protect art, to protect love, to protect kindness, and remind hate and bigotry that it will never, ever have a home in our home. And that is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy, do we have any other speaker slips?
I don't have any additional.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda, item D, a discussion. So we beg the public's indulgence, as with any discussion item, there are the ebbs and flows of questions of clarity and specificity, positions of stance and rebuttals. And through it all, we will collectively understand what were possible next steps and/or resolutions. We are all professionals and servants of the residents of Gahanna, and thus ask we remember to stay as thus. As for me, I simply humbly ask for forgiveness if what I may or may not say infringes upon your own beliefs. For the sake of clarity and context, please allow me to provide a simple background for our discussion item tonight, and then I'll ask the mayor if she'd like to add anything additional. As I understand the matter, the mural underneath the Granville Street Bridge near Creekside was determined to need a refresh. Our Parks Department had asked the schools for help in creating a new mural. Elementary school students, some of their families, as well as their art teachers through the school's community art program, got together and created a piece of artwork to be displayed as the new mural. In fact, the children were asked to depict the city that they live in. Originally, I had not seen the artwork until very late today. In my humble opinion, it is clear that this artwork is from children and much the stuff of easily hanging on someone's refrigerator. However, it is arguable that one of the two artworks does contain two small items that may be controversial to some people. To that point, the mayor and I equally and jointly agreed that the best practice forward would be to have a public discussion on a policy for the displays on public property. So this discussion item has two goals. One, the broader issue of policy displays on public spaces, and two, a general understanding of the current state of the murals requested. Mayor, do you have anything addition or anything you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to also thank you for your collaboration and being willing to have this conversation tonight. I think it's important for our community to be part of the conversation as well. I think our collective responsibility as elected leaders is to act in the best interest of the 36,000 or so people who live here. And that specifically means to ensure that we are acting with fairness and equality in conforming with policies and laws. The challenge that we have here is that the city does not have a policy with regard to artwork in public spaces and how we will deal with that. I think it's very clear, I think it's very important that whatever policy is adopted is very clear, that it is not constitutionally vague, because we can be assured that we will be held to the letter of the policy of whatever it is we do. Once something goes up, we then have to be responsible for that. Although I practiced law for nearly 30 years, I did not practice constitutional law, and I'm not a practicing lawyer right now, and I'm not in a position to give a legal opinion as to what that policy should and shouldn't look like or to evaluate that. I think we, the administration, wanted to have the conversation with council because we need clear guidance from you, and as well as from our city attorney as to what a city policy will be and should be. That's, again, why I reached out to all of you to have the conversation, to get guidance from you for the administration. I've been informed by the city attorney. He's been doing some research. I will defer to him for further comment on that, and look forward to the conversation so that we can bring some resolution and get some clear guidance as to how we will go forward for the city.
Mayor, thank you. Mr. City Attorney, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you. What you have to keep in mind, the question that was presented to me and the question I'm addressing today is, how does all displays on public property, how are they affected by freedom of speech? And freedom of speech is just not speech, it's any written, painted, and any type of display that's put on public property. The answer is pretty simple. I said, let's go see what our policy is, because you have to have a policy on this. We do not have a policy on this. Now, that's like pretty much every other city I've been able to find out here in Central Ohio or anywhere. Very few of them have a policy on this. It's very difficult from the cases I've read to try to chisel out a policy that meets all the requirements. But we don't have a policy, and we need to have a policy on what can be what political and/or religious connotations can be displayed on public property without opening up the Pandora's box. If you put a political or a religious display on public property and it's not government speech, then anyone is allowed to put a political or religious display on public property, even if it's not related to what that original display was. Now, one of the cases I read, excuse me if it offends anyone, but they said that means anyone from Boy Scouts to Nazis. Anyone can put anything up that they want once you destroy the public aspect of it and make it a completely public forum. And that is done by displaying anything that can be deemed to be political or religious. I had mentioned government speech. Government speech is separate. The government is allowed to have an opinion. The government is allowed to pass a resolution to say, hey, this is what we believe. This is what this city stands for, and therefore we are going to put that in public property. That can be done. But that has to be done by, well, frankly, council in this case would have to pass a resolution and say, this is what the position of the city is on whatever topic, and therefore we are going to allow this, whatever the display that's requested is, to go forward. So that is the nutshell. It's an all or nothing thing at this point until we have a specific policy in place. If we allow one, we allow them all.
Okay. Any questions?
I've got a question.
Ms. Bowers, please.
So I understand that there is no policy to date, but if maybe the Parks and Rec Department could speak to what the process, or the mayor could speak to what the process has been to date. I know we have members from the Arts Council here in the audience tonight, and Ms. Hawk has been responsible for other projects, art projects that have been displayed on city property. So if I could have a better understanding of what the process has been so far, that might be a helpful foundation to this conversation.
Director Farrell, do you want to speak to that?
Good evening. So particularly each project is different. It depends on what type of project that it is brought forward to us. We have worked with the schools collaboratively with projects such as murals at Pizarro Dog Park, the water wall at Creekside. So typically there's a conversation with the schools about what type of artwork is either being discussed or that shows any type of interest. And then we, of course, work with the schools in order to determine a timeline. And then Sharon has typically been the main contact for us within the schools. She takes it to the art groups, depending on what level of artwork that we're identifying. She determines the students who are going to be working on that said project. For the murals specifically, again, this is the second, I know that in 2007 was the last time that the murals were done. They were actually obviously showing their lifespan and needed to be redone. Sharon had reached out to us to provide some additional funding through the Parks and Recreation Foundation. So the community art group came to the foundation to request some funding for that particular project. Funding was approved. I know they had additional partners as well in order to make the project happen. And then from there, the art group worked with the community art group in order to determine what those images were. So again, it's circumstantial based off of what project is being done at what particular time.
And what's the review process been with the art with the schools and then the other publicly displayed art?
Typically, we would see those images. There are times that we have to make adjustments, or the images are too small, too large. Obviously, we want to make sure that it's a right fit for that particular location. So we see those images, and then the timeline is then move forward with the actual action of the art being displayed.
And maybe this question is more for the city attorney, but whoever can weigh in on this. Since we've now received the art, we've followed the same process that we've followed in the past. Are we not attempting to censor it now? That would be my concern, is that since we've solicited it, we've received it, and we're now trying to create a policy for artwork that we've already received, isn't that a censoring of what we've received?
No, because we don't have a policy.
But we have a history of action.
Right, and she said some of the things we asked for changes to.
Are there?
Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Director. Are there typically agreements in place when you've partnered with the schools or with other artists or the Arts Council? Does the Parks and Rec Department or the city at large have any sort of signed agreement when entering into, well, when agreeing to these sort of projects?
We have not in historic had any type of agreements with the schools. It's just a working relationship, and we have not had those formal agreements in the past with the schools.
So I think, if I may.
Please, go ahead. I'm just looking. Sorry.
So I think I share Councilwoman Bowers' concerns that she was getting at. I think I'm all about, let's create a policy, let's have that conversation. We absolutely should have a content policy. And moving forward, where I have concerns is trying to address something that has already been submitted to us. I think that wades into dangerous territory and that we don't want to be part of. But moving forward, I think we should craft a policy. And frankly, we have subject matter experts in our community and in this room who can help us do that. And I think it's long past time that we formalize a relationship with the Arts Council to work to do that moving forward. Because they're the subject matter experts. Whether that, to Mr. City Attorney's point, other cities may not have those policies in place themselves, but other cities have partnerships with arts councils who do this, or a public arts commission that reviews these sorts of projects. So I think for me, let's explore that conversation, let's have that conversation, but I don't think it would be appropriate for us to create a policy that applies to this particular project as retroactive when we already have the art.
If you allow this policy, this project go forward, you are creating a policy. If it is deemed to be political, you have now opened that Pandora's box, and you can't close it once it's been opened.
Mr. City Attorney, if you could share with us the case law that you're referencing, is it specifically related to permits that allow groups to march on public property and display signs when they are on public property? Or are you specifically talking about a public partnership where the city is contracting with an entity? You're saying that we would then have to contract with every entity that comes forward to us?
What I'm saying is, if you want to allow those murals to go forward, you can do that. It has to become government speech. And to become government speech, let me see, here's what you need to do. You need to adopt a resolution that provides clear guidelines on the expressive actions such as displaying ceremonial flags or commemorative murals. You need to select a location on the public property and clearly state that the selected location does not constitute a public forum. That's what differentiates it. Once it becomes a public forum, that's when anyone's allowed to speak. If feasible, you select a location where the city has previously engaged in government speech. You need to state the expressive action that it reflects the views of the city council, and you do not engage in expressive action based solely on requests from a third party and do not sponsor expressions of a third party. They need to be the expressions of city council themselves. That's what makes it a government speech, and then that's what allows us to put it on public property. So I'm not saying this stuff can't be done. I'm just saying this is how it has to be done.
So I think in follow-up, if I may, and Director, I think this is for you. In the past, when we've requested changes, or when the department's requested changes, Has that been based on content, or more, is it more related to the physical size? You know, hey, we need something bigger for here, or it just doesn't fit the four corners of the document, so to speak, versus the actual content of the document itself?
It just, again, depends on what project. We want to make sure that, it's, the right images are in the right location. So if there's any particular changes that need to be made, then we have that opportunity to have that conversation. And if I could, we have worked in partnership with the Arts Council. We have had agreements. Bright Blocks is an example of that. I think right now having that partnership with the schools along with the Arts Council is something that we have not done, but we have had those agreements with the Arts Council in the past for projects for public art.
Thank you, Director. I think that's it for the moment.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, I'm trying to understand a little bit to your point, and I understand your point about the formality of government speech. Can you help me resolve something in my mind, though, is we're actually talking about, in this particular instance, a product of artwork from children from a public entity. So how does that differ from, or doesn't it differ from other things that you were regarding toward the formality of public speech? In fact, one could argue that public speech has already happened by the school children.
But not on public property. Now, the difference is, as I said, my determination is not based upon this project. It's based upon displays, all sorts of displays, every display in public property, okay? That's what I'm gearing my conversations towards. Like I said, in order, if it's going to be a display on public property, and if it at some point is deemed to be political, that's when that public property it's on becomes a public forum and anyone's allowed, unless that it is protected by it being government speech. Government is allowed to have an opinion. Government is allowed to say, this is how we feel. What's on that mural is how this government feels, and this is our position as the city of Gahanna. Then it can be put on public property without it becoming a public forum. Does that help?
Well,
Did
I
answer?
think, but what I'm trying to ask is that this is speech from children. So isn't that different?
Nope.
And also, isn't the point of not posting it also setting policy? By saying, by the very nature of saying, oh, we're not going to do it until we actually do a policy, isn't that setting a de facto policy?
Well, the de facto policy is we're not allowing anything on public property that's not sanctioned by the government. And that's fine policy, and that's fine to have. We're allowed to do that. You're right, it would be setting that policy, but we are allowed to do that. That's really how most cities go. That's why most don't have policies. They go by that. That is what their position is.
Ms. Bowers, I think I heard you.
Yes, I just don't understand how this is different from all the other public art displays that have already been approved without council action. And I guess I'm just very confused about why now it doesn't feel appropriate for a city council doesn't vote on every single piece of art that gets displayed on public property, nowhere across the region that I'm aware of. So it just seems like it seems like you're asking us to do something. I'm confused on what you're asking us to do, because what you said when you were reading, I think something that I'm not sure where it was cited from, but you said that we needed to pass a resolution. So, but I don't know what that resolution would look like. And at this point, we are 2 weeks, I think, from a ribbon cutting for this, and no policy was in place, and we would just follow the practices that we've been following. That's what I guess I'm just very confused with where we are.
I have one of the things I looked at in my research. It's an article from the League of California Cities, and attached to it, they have several resolutions that, as examples to be used. So if that helps, I can forward that to you. And frankly, it was that article that clearly defined what government speech is and how to try to make sure this is determined to be government speech. So you're not, frankly, Bloomington, Indiana is in a federal law case right now concerning they allowed certain things to be put on a public space, and then someone wanted to put something that was similar yet different from that. They said no. That was even deemed to be government speech, what they allowed, because there was specific resolution. They even said there's a specific resolution that they even helped pay for it, and then the city approved everything. And they say city, we have to say you, because you are the ones who would be making this. We don't have, as you said, a arts commission or anything like that can do these type of things. But then again, they would still need to have guidance. But they're currently in that lawsuit, and they had to put a policy together. The federal judge gave them 45 days to put a policy together. They put it together. I was looking at it today. I'm not sure if that's going to pass muster or not, because it's really hard to try to govern these things. So the judge said that even though that was protected speech, or government speech, I'm sorry, as to what they did, they still didn't have a policy, enough of a policy that was, because they allowed some things and not others in other areas, and then therefore that's where their case slipped up. That's why I am very cautious of saying, please don't let one thing slip up everything else.
Mr. Snetzer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think in many cases, government policy, whether it be at the local, state, or the federal level, it is kind of reactive by nature as much as, so I'll speak for myself, as much as I hate that. It is kind of the nature of the business. My understanding, and just sitting here and listening to the discussion so far, is that it sounds as though why this is in front of us is because some of the imagery that's been received, there's a concern that it could be, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Millarcy, because I believe this has a legal definition, is political speech. That's
Yes.
essentially where what's tricky about this.
Exactly.
We're not talking pictures of apple orchards or people, canoeing in the creek, but there's some components of the art thus that, again, I haven't seen it, full disclosure, but nonetheless, I'm relying on those that have, that it could be deemed political. And because of that, if it is permitted to go through in the absence of a policy, then it opens up Pandora's box, to use your phrase.
If it is deemed to be political, then that is
Okay.
correct. And then someone else could come and say, well, you allowed this political statement, why not mine?
So if we say we don't want to open Pandora's box, then it is necessarily so that we adopt a policy. And do I have that? I'm trying to understand kind of what is the ask.
You can adopt a policy, or you can make it government speech. And by making it government speech, you're saying that the city of Gahanna sanctions this individual item. Please keep in mind, I've been trying not to gear my comments towards any individual thing. I'm trying to cover the whole general gamut, because it does cover everything. That's the problem. Even if this is a minor political issue, you're opening it for big political issues unless this is government speech.
Okay. And so in order to make it government speech, this council has to pass a resolution.
Yes.
And if this council does not pass a resolution and the murals go up, someone could come in with any number of other political items, and there'd be no recourse. We couldn't.
Well, if it were to be deemed, we of course would argue it wasn't political speech, but if it were to be deemed political, and to be honest, I haven't seen these either, so I don't know. I'm, again, offering generic comments.
Sounds like it opens us up to litigation, which I'm sure this town's had enough of. Okay. So I guess that's an accurate assessment of why this is here in front of us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, I am really bothered. This city is, by reviewing our zoning code over the weekend, and I've been around long enough to see some of the issues that have popped up before Planning Commission and what have you. I think that we are woefully inept in ability to address artwork. And so therefore, I am very fearful of deeming any type of art as political speech. And I feel like we don't have real content masters before us, no offense, but to really deem, that content and declare it as political speech. It's children's drawings. So how do we go from that point to, can't we just say, I know you're probably tired of me saying this, but we have a public entity, a school system that have children, our community children, that created something. And I know, Mayor, we're not supposed to get into the content, and I'm trying, but I think all of us are treading a fine line. But it's almost an impossible mission. We're balancing what to do now when we don't even know how to do it, and then we're supposed to give you direction about going forward.
I'll just respond real briefly, since you directed a comment to me. And it's not about that we're not supposed to discuss content. It's not necessarily about the specific content. We all support our children. We support the schools. As I've heard Mr. Malarski say, and as I just heard Councilman Schnetzer summarize, the issue here is what's different about this artwork is that it has content in it that potentially could be deemed to be political interest, if I heard you correctly, Mr. Malarski and Councilman Schnetzer. We don't have a policy for that. And so that was why I wanted to have the discussion with council as to how do you want to handle this and what are the legal issues, if any, should we allow this to go forward given what it potentially could be deemed. Does it create any liability for us? I don't know. That's the whole point of this conversation. At the end of the day, as Councilman Schnetzer just said, we've seen our share of lawsuits around here. My goal, as all of our goals should be collectively, is to ensure that we are protecting our taxpayers' interests here. So that's the whole point of this conversation, is to identify what legal avenues and what legal bumps in the road we potentially could have, or maybe we don't. I don't know. That's why I wanted to have the conversation with both council and our city attorney.
I appreciate that, and I did not mean for my statement to actually say that I don't want to look for after the interest of our city.
Sure,
of our
I just want to make sure
taxpayers.
we're clear
Yeah.
that this isn't about this particular artwork. It's about the broader issue of, do we
Yeah.
need a policy? If this goes up, do we create a policy? And what legal issues, if any, does it create for the city if we don't have a policy? If the answer is none, then that's the answer.
Mr. Snyder.
To the question of does it make sense to adopt a policy, I mean, I've heard others here say that it does, and I mean, I think that would be prudent. That's a whole nother conversation about what should be in the policy, and on that topic, I rewind, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, we were talking about yard signs, and I understand that's private property versus public property, but the topic of political speech did come up in that conversation. Mr. Malarski, I believe you were absent. Mr. Roth was here in your stead, and he had referenced, I think it was some, I don't know, state Supreme Court case out of Cleveland or something that said you couldn't limit political speech. So I have a question with regard to this concept of adopting a policy. Can you write a policy, and this council adopts it, that is defensible in court, that says, we'll allow public art, but we won't allow political content in that policy?
Try my best. I couldn't find any out there that Columbus doesn't even have it. I thought for sure Columbus would have a policy by now, but they don't have one. It's very difficult to do, but I will do my best. That's my job.
I guess, is it even permitted? Is it even permitted to allow public art, but accept EXCEPT, the idea of political content in that art?
I think as a practical matter, most entities avoid this by using external bodies. I mean, that's the reality, right?
Right.
It avoids this problem.
Yeah.
And to Mike, I just want to reiterate, I share the mayor's concerns about avoiding litigation for this community. My concern is that we are now attempting to censor speech that we have solicited. So I do have that concern at this point. And I will just, because we have a bunch of artists in the room, art is inherently political. Even if it doesn't have letters in it, I don't know art that doesn't make some kind of statement about speech, about what we do in our society.
Anything else?
I'd like to go back to 2007. I think that's when the murals went up. Was there any kind of, where the city said, make this about how wonderful Creekside is, and we want to do all the things that are beautiful and things like that? Or did they have another way of saying what was needed? Do you know what the answer to that?
That predates me, so I unfortunately don't have the answer to what that process was in 2007.
Thank you. Nancy, would you possibly know? I was off council at that point.
I know the first mural down there was on the side of the bridge, and it was really done as an education project for the environment. It told a story about storm sewers and where the storm sewers, the stuff in the storm sewer went, and it was a mural on one side of the bridge abutment. And so it had a relationship to what the natural area that was there. And that told that story in a painting, but it was that was what the original mural was before the 2007.
Mr. Weaver, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I keep coming back in my mind to, these are students of our public schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that in our communications as a city, we are communicating with representatives from the school district and not with the individual students themselves on this project. For the record, director's nodding, so thank you. So to Ms. Bowers' point that all art is inherently political, it's what it does, it challenges, it pushes, and I think back to my time as an actor at GLHS, putting on stage performances with speech that is challenging, political, and some might view as controversial, but the school has a policy, school district has a policy for what their students can engage in, and maybe I'm making a leap here, but the school district would have a policy that students need to follow when creating art, whether that's on the stage or in painting or sculpture, if you're using school resources and on public property, the school's property. So I worry, all that to say, I don't want to harp too much. I worry that we are censoring something that does not need to be censored and should not be censored, and a policy, whether through action or by inaction, as the city attorney has said, is we as the city should not necessarily be the ones to do that. And I will go back to my previous comments of that's why we have subject matter experts, that we work with community partners to do this. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Padova.
So this might be similar to what Mr. Weaver just said, but Mr. Malarski, you said that other communities have other bodies that approve this, and in our case, isn't the teacher or the school the person or body that is approving this project?
No, they're not part of the government.
How so?
They're a separate governmental entity. They're not part of the city of Gahanna. They're two separate entities.
Okay.
Can we put a disclaimer? We're going to lighten the mood. Can we put a disclaimer on the mural that says, this is not approved by the city of Gahanna? This has been approved. This is art provided by art students in Gahanna schools.
We'll count that as lighthearted because that's exactly what would get us sued. But by putting it in a public place, but letting something that's not approved by the city of Gahanna up there. But I understand you're trying to be lighthearted.
Okay.
Ms. McGregor?
Would there be any difference if it was just an art show at, like, we had students that, you know, exhibiting art around Creekside? But this is a permanent artwork that'll be up for years. Would there be any difference? I mean, if they, you know, if it was just an art show, but that, you know, anybody can say anything in art, and not, you know, I don't necessarily agree that all art is political, because, you know, I've seen some, it's just nice art. But it doesn't have to have a political component to it. But this will be there forever. And I mean, we have 36,000 residents, and, you know, what's political to some person might not be political to somebody else. Or this opinion, you know, we have different people with different views. So.
What I have read, some of it does depend on the length of time. Usually 7 days seems to be a cutoff as to whether or not you can allow more things, because then it's only temporary. So then, but I don't want to answer that as explicit. That was only part of lots of stuff I've been reading over the last 4 days.
If this was deemed political, does that mean then candidates can put up their signs in any of our parks or public places? If this is deemed political, how do you determine whether a political sign is different from a mural that has?
You most likely can limit it to the same or similar location, for one thing, so not just anywhere. But secondly, I don't know. It's a combination, because political signs are also governed by our signage. Now, we're not allowed to regulate political speech on private property, but we are on public property. So I don't know. I'd have to look further into that.
Mr. Snetzer?
I guess maybe just to wrap it up, essentially what is the ask? I mean, it's a discussion item, but we don't have a draft resolution or anything like that. I mean, is that the next step?
Well, I think that is what we're trying to get to. I'm giving my colleagues time to vet this, but apparently we need to provide input on what the next steps are. And it sounds like there's no hope in salvaging the current process, that Parks asked for something. And now we have to go at least by the deadline. And now we need to give direction on what it is, how we want to formalize a policy.
So we're moving down the path of crafting a policy.
Apparently, because in the absence of a policy, now we have a problem, right?
Yep.
It is just my opinion, and only my opinion apparently, that we should just move forward and put up what we need to do and go forward with a policy. I don't think, again, this is Stephen Renner's limited world view of things. I don't think there really is a liability. I think children can stand on a podium in Central Square and actually shout whatever they want. And that is what they can paint, they paint with chalk.
Stephen, I don't think you're alone in that opinion.
Okay, well, I haven't heard anything.
I will share with you that and I think Mr. Weaver has said the same, and I think Ms. Padova is also nodding her head, that we agree with you that this should move forward as all the other art and all the other projects that have moved forward with Parks and Rec. And that yes, a policy can happen for subsequent projects, but there are 3 other council members in addition to you that share your view that the students' art should move forward.
The safest way is for the city to own the art then, and to say this is representative of the city. That's the safest way.
Safest way to say that again, I'm
The
sorry.
safest way to make that happen is for the city to own this art and to say this is the official view of the city. That covers us.
By resolution.
Right. Yes.
So since we've already sort of treaded into, does prior statements of this body carry any weight?
Would have to know what the prior statements are.
Prior resolutions that this body has already passed this year, and
Well,
last year, and the year before.
it should, if you're going to pass a resolution, it needs to be directed at a particular piece of artwork. The city can own artwork. If the city buys something, then that is the city statement saying this is what we believe is representative of our city. There was one where, opinions change, and one of the federal departments wanted to remove a piece of artwork that was sitting in their lobby because they didn't feel that it any longer represented a fair juxtaposition between labor and the owners. And they were allowed to do that because it was their piece of artwork at that time. So if the city owns the artwork or takes ownership of the piece of art, then they can do what they want.
So should we then pass resolutions for all other art on public property and take ownership of that art? Because that would seem to me the logical step, that we must.
Only if it's political.
Okay, so are the fish and all the fish that are down at like the parks that were financed through a sustainability and environmental aspect and in partnership with grants, those have political speech to them because they're about protecting the environment.
You're talking about the sculptures, right?
The-
I believe
the
those are
metal-
all owned by the city.
Yes. So
Okay.
if we own them and they are
Right.
political speech, should we then not also pass resolutions that take ownership of that art? Because that also has political
No, we own them.
speech to it.
We own them, we don't have to. Like I just said in that previous example, if we own the art, we don't have to pass a resolution, it's ours. And that is political, governmental speech.
Why would we not own this art? Because the contractor, like, we've already contracted with this, we've already engaged this art, and it's on city property. So how is this different?
Because it has a political statement in it, and we're not the owners of it. We didn't say this is our art. When you own art, you own art. You own it, okay? I mean, I don't know how else, that the sculptures are owned by us, and this is not. This is someone else's artwork on our seawall, or bridge wall.
I'm sorry, who does? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Padova.
The fish is someone else's artwork that someone else created, but the city owns, correct?
Yes.
So this mural would be someone else's artwork, but the city would own the art that is under the bridge, that is on that wall, correct? I don't see where the difference is there.
No, that is not unless the city takes ownership of it. And the city takes ownership of it by purchasing or saying that murals are different, that's what got Bloomington in trouble. They allowed murals to be painted, and then they didn't allow alternate view to be painted, and then that's when they got in trouble. You can't do that. You can't.
All right, so let me put this forward, because I think I want to help to Councilman Snetcher's point, try to wrap this up. It sounds like there's two actions before us, whether they're popular or not. One, we need a resolution in order to adopt and say, go forward with the current murals. Is that correct?
If you want to do that, yes.
That would apparently, again, just to reiterate what I think I heard is if we pass a resolution that exempts it from this idea of political speech on public property, because it then becomes government speech.
Right.
Do I have that correct, Mr. Malarski?
Yes.
So that's one way around the current issue. I think the other question that you were about to ask is okay, what do we do about a policy?
Long-term, correct.
The future.
So I think, Mr. President, then, if we would like a resolution to come forward before this body in time for the artwork to move forward, we would need a special meeting this week. I'd be happy to make myself available for that.
That's fine, or we can do a special meeting on Monday. That still would, our normal time.
Is that sufficient time? I see some heads shaking in the negative.
Well, I guess that's a good question. If we did such action, what timeline are we talking about? Because we have no knowledge. We don't know what the current status is of the murals.
Mr. President, could I make a comment too? I just want to make the record clear that I think the first instance that council was aware of this issue was on Friday via an email from Mr. Renner. And as we've heard tonight, not all council members have even seen the proposed art. So I do apologize to the students, to the Parks and Rec Department, and to the foundation that this is coming to us at the 11th hour. And I do want you to know that this is not comfortable for us either.
And so we're clear, Councilwoman, I found out about it on Thursday. So it was not comfortable for me either, and trying to understand what the legal parameters were, and again, having the conversation with our council president, immediately seeking his input on this and identifying the best course of action. This, I was very grateful for his collaboration and his discussion and coming to the conclusion that this was the conversation that needed to be had.
Thank you. Director, what is the timeline, and how, is there time to salvage this?
I think the 13th wouldn't be enough time, but that's not to say that the ribbon cutting could be set back. If the decision is to move forward as is, then there would be a new date established for the ribbon cutting for those murals. I think that would be the most logical time frame at this point.
I guess the question I'm asking is that if council took action in a special meeting and passed such a resolution next Monday, when would it be? So I'm understanding that the 12th or the 13th can't happen. How much of a delay does it push it?
I think an extra week from there would be ideal, but again, with schedules, I don't want to determine a date for other parties. I think that would have to be a discussion with the schools to establish what that appropriate date would be.
Okay, fair enough.
So I guess I'll just ask the natural question here. Mr. Malarski's laid out what appears to be the possible range of solutions here. What is the will of council? Like I said before, I've not seen anything. I can't sit here and say that I'm on board with really any resolution. So is no resolution an option? Oh, must we pass a resolution? Is resolution just simply the will of a handful of council? Is it all of council? I mean, I guess where are we as far as a consensus on this entire ordeal at this point?
Yeah, so I think your question might be to a couple of our other colleagues, because 4 of us have actually made a very demonstrative effort to say, we're going to pass a resolution.
All right. I guess it's moving forward.
Then second, to that point, long-term, I guess we need to give the mayor and the administration ideas about what we want to see in a policy. Is that accurate?
That would be correct. I mean, I don't know if we have enough at this point to, just given your feedback today, to put something together or look at other other options that might be out there. If we need continued dialogue, but we could put a draft of something together and bring it forward for your consideration.
Right. I know you've talked about, and I've heard today by some of my colleagues, I can't remember who, but there are arts commissions. Maybe we create an arts commission, maybe, and fill it with experts from Gahanna. Other ideas?
Mr. President, I think that's all on the table and would be a great discussion item for the future. As Mr. Schnetzer has said before, don't want to be overly reactive, but want to be intentional in what we do moving forward so that we can get it right. It'd be great to hear from some of our subject matter experts and some of our other community partners as we move forward with either crafting a policy or formalizing that relationship with an external community partner that does this, who would then have such a policy so that the city would not need to do, because as I'm hearing, I think from Mr. Malarski, sometimes not having the policy is maybe better if a community partner does the work.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, it's been a long 4 days. I've been trying, I have outside counsel who's working with me on this too. I'm not doing this by myself.
Great to
but,
hear from outside
I-
counsel,
you
too,
know,
if need be.
It's a very complicated issue, and I'm trying to give you the best I can. I did just send you guys the links to that article that has some the exhibits at the end of that links have some example resolutions that could be used. Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
I was reminded that the Planning Commission has approved some murals and that there has been some art that's gone through Planning Commission. I know that is, I think that's distinct because it's gone on private property instead of public property, but I'm also interested in understanding, because the Planning Commission is an arm of the city and does act on behalf of the city, would this perhaps be better suited to the Planning Commission in the future?
I don't know their expertise in this area.
Or why wouldn't this go through Planning Commission, I guess is the question that I have.
It's like you said, Planning Commission is, well, they also do deal with public property, but generally it's improvements on public property. Usually Parks and Rec deals with these type of things. Planning Commission does it when it's a change in a building. Like if you change the color of a building, you have to go through Planning Commission. I think that falls in the same category, but I am not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure what murals we're talking about. I can think of one, but I don't know about all of them.
There was a mural done on you're right, it was private property, so a little different, but that's certainly, Planning Commission is certainly consideration. Is it, Parks Board, is that another consideration? I don't know. I mean, I think there's some options. City of Columbus has a Columbus Arts Commission that is appointed as well. So there's various ways that you could go.
Yeah, I'm in favor of actually finding art experts to fill the commission. I still humbly disagree that all art is actually political, but art does, its duty is to solicit responses, and we may get yays and yays about it, but so be it. All right, so any other comments, questions? Mayor, do you have enough right now to move forward?
I think we do. Certainly enough to get a draft of something started to then begin the conversation. So
All
thank
right,
you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers, you're going to draft the resolution.
No, Mr. Malarski needs to present the resolution to us.
Okay.
I just gave you some examples, about 5 examples here.
All right, we'll work
So
together
you
during the week
decide
and
which ones
get
you
this
want, yeah.
resolved. Okay. Good. All right, well, I'll complete this discussion, and I really do thank all my colleagues, the city attorney and the mayor for this. You could tell it was definitely a little rough for us. One of my heroes is actually Thomas Jefferson, and I'll just close with a quote in a letter to a friend of his at the time. He was 81, and to a friend of his of the opposite party. He said, "A government held together by the bonds of reason only requires much compromise of opinion." All right, discussion closed. Item E, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to pass the consent agenda as published?
So moved, Mr. President.
I have a first by Mr. Snetzer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weaver. Any discussion? Okay, Jeremy, please call the roll.
Schnetzer?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
McGregor?
Yes.
Padova?
Yes.
Renner?
Yes.
Angelou?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item F, ordinances for introduction and first reading. There are 3. We're not going to take action on these, but I'll read them into the record. Ordinance 24, 2023, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations, a TIF fund, bond retirement fund, and police pension fund. Ordinance 25-2023, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations, general fund, streets fund, and water fund for damage to city property. Ordinance 26, 2023, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations, water meter fees. Item G, correspondence and actions. Mr. Clerk, do you have anything for us tonight?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, sir. My colleagues on council, do we have anything? No more discussion? All right, thank you. Item H, representatives, Community Improvement Corporation. In addition to the report that I gave the last time, Mr. Weaver did remind me that we do have our next CIC meeting on May 16th, Tuesday, May 16th in the morning at 8 a.m. in the committee rooms. Mr. Weaver, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Item 2, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, MORPC, Ms. Angelou.
Thank you. Obviously, this is towards the very beginning of May. Consequently, I will have the executive committee on Thursday, and then, of course, the commission at the next Thursday. We have some information. Jeremy put it in there. It's 2023-81 report. But I would like to say that last Wednesday, I celebrated Diversity Month. MORPC had an event advancing diversity and fostering a culturally inclusive workplace. The MORPC moderator was, of course, Neil Jurist. Everybody knows Neil Jurist from all the work that she did in Gahanna, and I kind of go the great city of Gahanna. And so she was the panelist, the moderator there. The panelists included Jason Jenkins. He is the executive director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for the city of Columbus. Then Josue Vicente, executive director, Ohio Hispanic Coalition, and Sherrig Slidge, I hope I have this right, Slidge Thomas, VP Diversity, Inclusion, and Access, Columbus Chamber of Commerce. It was just a very terrific hour of discussion, and I was so happy that I had attended it. This is the type of thing that MORPC does very, very well, and I'm just pleased to have been part of this whole thing. That's all I have.
Thank you. Item 3, Convention and Visitors Bureau, Ms. Padova.
Thank you. Herb Day is this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Creekside Plaza. There will be tons of herbs for sale as well as other plants. They have 35 vendors that will be lined up in the front and back of the plaza. They will also have a scavenger hunt, make your own plant markers, listen to music, take a guided tour of the Creekside Arboretum, and enjoy food from the Creekside restaurants. And you can also take advantage of Cora and grab a beverage while shopping for plants and other items. National Tourism Week begins this Sunday, and to celebrate Visit Gahanna, we'll be doing the Urban Restaurant Week. So that will be taking place from May 7th to the 13th, and 12 establishments around Gahanna will be offering beverages, appetizers, dinners, desserts, all that feature different herbs from May 7th to the 13th, and those restaurants will be listed on the Visit Gahanna website. The CVB will also be participating in Tourism Day on the State House lawn on May 10th, and they're going to be encouraging people to visit Gahanna and hand out promotional materials as well. We are also less than 50 days away from the Creekside Blues and Jazz Festival, and volunteers are still needed. So you can go to creeksidebluesandjazz.com to sign up and get more information to volunteer. The CVB's director made 2 television appearances on 10 TV and Fox 28 this weekend, promoting the festival in conjunction with International Jazz Day. So encourage everybody to go try to volunteer and sign up for that here this summer. I think that pretty much all of council volunteered last year, and it was a lot of fun. So it's a good way to see a lot of neighbors out and about, and it's usually, hopefully, it will be nice and sunny.
Thank you. School board report, Ms. Powers.
Yes, thank you. There's 17 days left of school, but nobody's counting, I'm sure. Today is Bus Driver Appreciation Day, and on Friday, it's going to be School Lunch Hero Day. We are celebrating Staff and Teacher Appreciation Week all week long across the district. Middle School West PTO hosted a spring cleanup day yesterday, April 30th. thanks to Emily Bernard for organizing and all the volunteers who helped freshen up the property and decorate posters for the staff and teachers. I also wanted to note that GLHS students received honors at arts competitions, quite on topic for tonight. The Visual Art Department received many awards at the Scholastic Regional Art and Writing Competition and the Regional Ohio Governor's Youth Art Exhibit. Congratulations to all those students. As a reminder, you can sign up for weekly district updates by going to the District Info tab on GahannaSchools.org website. Thank you.
Thank you. Official reports, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the conversation tonight. It's clearly, I think, Mr. Council President, as you said, it's a complex, complicated issue, as evidenced by the fact that we spent over an hour in discussion on this topic. Ultimately, the overriding concern is always that the city is operating fairly and equally in conformance with the law, and that the legal interests of all of our residents are protected. And that was the purpose of the conversation tonight. I appreciate, again, the conversation and the last 4 days of legal research I know our city attorney has been doing. So we will take your comments from tonight and come back with a draft of a policy for consideration by council to ensure that as we go forward, that's what we have in place. Also would like to thank Ms. Barb Cox for her presentation this evening. I first met her when she became an Eagle Scout within the past year, and I appreciate her interest in air pollution and sustainability. I'm going to tap you for the resident sustainability group that is coming as well. And it is Air Quality Awareness Month, so we'll be issuing that proclamation. So those I told her if I'd known she was giving this tonight, I would have actually had that this evening for her. But look forward to presenting that proclamation as well with MORPC. Coming up, thank you for the Councilwoman Padova for the listing of the upcoming herb events that we have. There will be a proclamation designating this week Herb Week in Gahanna, as we do every year with Herb Day and Urban Restaurant Week coming up. Also, the school musicals coming up next week, Newsies, I think Thursday through Sunday, the 11th through the 14th. And I believe, as we heard from Mrs. Maciosi when she was here previously, this will be her last one, at least officially in that role. So I'm sure that Sunday will be a very emotional day for everybody involved, but I encourage the community to come on out and support the drama program at the high school. It's always an incredible experience. The talent is always so overwhelming. And then our Veterans Committee is planning the Memorial Day celebration. I don't know exactly what time that will be yet, but certainly we will post information on that as soon as that becomes available. From a city standpoint, I know we've had conversations here in council chambers with residents who have come forward before with regard to parking across the street, Jan Drive, Gary Lee, et cetera. That is something that Director Becker, our public safety director, myself, Chief Spence, Lieutenant Moffitt have been working on for several months, trying to balance the residents' concerns as well as with the public safety needs. Director Becker is having a conversation with those residents, I believe Wednesday evening, at the Senior Center at 5:30, so council members are welcome to attend that as well. But I know they've been working on some recommendations for some changes to the signage on those streets, so that meeting is happening. Parks and Rec is still hiring for summer positions. We are in desperate need of camp counselors, as well as some folks to work our pools and summer events so that we can continue to provide good quality events and activities for our residents. So if you, again, know of anyone, they are hiring, and I think we have open interviews again this week, the 4th and the 5th, is that correct? Something like that. It's posted. It's posted online and on our website. I know we're looking for weather trends, keeping an eye on that as to when we can prepare and open the splash pad. The pools will be opening Memorial Day, hoping to get that splash pad open for the community to enjoy prior to that, but Mother Nature is going to have to remember that it's May and not March. I think she's a little backwards, so hopefully the weather will get better in the next few weeks. The Parks and Rec Guide, summer guide, is out as well. That should have hit mailboxes. I did not have an opportunity to tell Director Farrell today. Over the weekend, had a resident say that they received the guide, and they were so excited at all of the wonderful things to do in our community. So that list continues to grow with our programming, and appreciate the work of our Parks and Recreation team for the work that they're doing in putting together really engaging programs for all ages of our community. Uniquely Gahanna should have also hit the mailboxes, the latest edition of that. That also has some really good information about things happening in the community. If you have not received one from a resident standpoint, let us know. We'll try to track that down. We have had some feedback about the fact that the bag comes in one of those plastic poly bags. The vendor distributes that way, so we've had conversations with them and asked them to explore some other options for mailing to see if we can avoid that. So hopefully more to come on that. And then finally, I will share what I know all of you are already aware of, that our Director of Economic Development, Nate Strum, is leaving the city. His last official day will be this week. His last official day in the office was Friday. He is working remotely, though, for a few days this week. He really just had an incredible opportunity with I can't compete with that private sector. They just, keep taking our people, but really an incredible opportunity where he's going to cover a whole swath from Kansas City to Pittsburgh with a team of dozens of people to oversee and being able to travel the world with putting together the deals that he can do. But I don't think we've seen the last of him. We're probably going to need him to come here and help us with a couple of projects that are pending. He's the only one that can probably speak well to them at this point. We will be engaging a development consultant in the interim period, but we do have his position posted. I've already received several really great applications in that, and as soon as I think that posting is up for yet another week, once that posting closes, we'll be scheduling interviews for that position as well. But again, I think Nate's email is still active, so you can still reach out to him if you did not have a chance to communicate with him. And again, I doubt that we've seen the last of him here in Chambers. He's always entertaining, and I will say today was extremely quiet on our end of the hallway. But other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney.
I believe I used up my word quota for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item J, council comment. Ms. Angelou.
I'm so sorry to see that Nate has left our community, and I wish we would have known. I didn't read it until after the little event that was, I guess, given to him.
You'll see him again.
He was spectacular, and it's truly a loss for us, but it's a wonderful thing for him. So all I can say is best wishes, and come and see us every once in a while, and maybe we can go watch him as he does his little whatever he does outside of the city. So it is May, and it's hard to believe that it's May because it's really cold and it's raining, and I don't know about you, but I want it to be sunny and get to at least 70 degrees every day. So everybody have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. Ms. McGregor.
Thank you. Had an opportunity to go to the Student Art Show at Clark Hall a couple weeks ago, and the amazing talent of the students was just pretty amazing. It was the one thing that I thought was different. There's just it seemed like hundreds of artwork, but I went a couple years ago, and there were so few people there, adults, like supporting it, but this time it was packed. You had to walk around, and it was really crowded. It was nice to see so many people there supporting the students and their artwork, and just all kinds of things from portraits to still life to lots of ceramics, and the variety was quite remarkable in their talent. So I enjoyed that a lot. I had a granddaughter that had a couple pieces there, and it was a lot of fun to go to, see all their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. Let me just touch on that. Thank you to Ray for your research, and thank you for circulating those draft or proposed resolutions. I will take a look at them and work with Council President on a resolution that we can put forward next week. I will be having a constituent hour on May 20th. It's a Saturday at 11 a.m. at Headley Park. Hopefully soccer game parking will have cleared out by then, so please join us for a constituent hour at the park. Congratulations to the American Legion for the first annual Walk in Our Boots 5K this past weekend. I know several of the members on the dais were able to attend that. Kudos to all participants and volunteers who made that event a success. Just a little bit on some activities from Make Gahanna Yours. I believe that if you'd like to sponsor a planter this year, that additional sponsorships are still available with Make Gahanna Yours, so you can have your own little sign and a planter on the plaza. They also just concluded a successful winter farmers market season on April 19th, and I am looking forward to the summer market season starting up in June. Thank you to Ms. Barb Cox for presenting tonight, and we do appreciate your work on making sure that we are being mindful about air quality and air pollution. I also had the pleasure of attending the Chiefs Civic Association meeting last week. As a reminder, those are held monthly on the last Thursday of the month, unless there's a holiday, in which case the chief will let people know when those are going to be. We talked about how there is an increase in fraud and mail theft around tax season. I know that has hit close to home here, so please be mindful about using secure mailbox if you're mailing checks or payments, and check your credit reports regularly to make sure that your identity has not been misused for fraudulent purposes. Congratulations to Gahanna Division of Police for the successful steering wheel lock distribution program that happened last week. I did get a question about that from a constituent. Yes, that was provided by the car manufacturers. There were 400 that were distributed in 9 hours. So those are available to residents who drive or own Kias or Hyundais. You do need to have proof of that vehicle in order to get a wheel lock from GPD, and they will be announcing the next round, hopefully after they get another batch. So thank you to Chief, and finally, thank you to the residents who attended tonight to speak. Ms. Snyder, I very much appreciate your comments. I live on the other side of the park from you and know how horrible those calorie pear trees are in our neighborhood. And so we are working, I know we will work on a solution to the right-of-way issue. Thank you to Mr. Tucker and Ms. Hawk again, and all the students in attendance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Padova.
Thank you. Thank you also to Ms. Barb Cox for your presentation. I had the pleasure to judge some of the CAP projects at St. Francis de Sales last week, and it's very encouraging to see high schoolers engaged. So thank you so much for being here tonight and standing in front of us and presenting. I wish Mr. Strom the best of luck. I will, like I'm sure most of my colleagues, miss his personality just as much as his expertise. This Thursday on May 4th from 5 to 8 is the Creekside Boutique Hop. So I encourage everybody to go stop by there at the Fable Collection, and in their parking lot, they're going to have a bunch of different vendors, including Stella and Grace Boutique that used to be at Creekside, and quite a few others. So that will be Thursday, May 4th from 5 to 8.
Thank you. Mr. Snutzer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just echo some of the sentiment that's already been expressed with regard to Director Strum's departure. Obviously, he provided a great deal of levity to sometimes fairly dry topics here in council chambers. He'll obviously be missed. I think it was inevitable that he was going to get plucked away from us, but I think I speak for all of us when I say we wish we had him just a little bit longer. To Ms. Barb Cox, kudos to you for taking the podium. I noticed you were reciting quite a few statistics there. That's not always easy to do on the fly, and I didn't see any cue cards. So again, great job. And then lastly from me, special thanks to city staff, the Parks Department in particular, and Mr. Zach Guthrie specifically for seeing to it that the Gahanna Junior League sports, also known as Little League Baseball here in town, was able to actually have our opening day despite the, I guess, not so great weather that we had preceding Saturday. I saw him out the evening before opening day, actually dragging the fields by himself with this, I think it was like a three-wheeler that had some special attachments to the back. An interesting machine nonetheless, but he was putting in the time to see to it that all the families were getting out there and were able to enjoy opening day. And based on what I saw, this is now my third year coaching, and it's a virtual receiving line walking back to field 3 with all the families and fellow coaches getting caught up on all the recent happenings. There were people out running and walking on the trails, walking their dogs, and it really is, in my mind, a little slice of Americana. So it's again, arguably the best of what Gahanna has to offer. So thanks to everyone that saw that went off without a hitch.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also want to thank all of our speakers and our community partners for being here and sharing their comments with us this evening. I want to thank School Board President Burl Brown Pickle Antonio for being here as well. Thank you, Ms. Barb Cox. I know we've been emailing back and forth for the past several weeks, so it was wonderful to officially meet you in person and hear from you directly, and kudos to you for all of your work. I appreciate you being here. This week is actually Municipal Clerk Appreciation Week, so I do want to give a shout out to our wonderful staff and our wonderful clerks who really run the city. They keep things going. So on behalf of my colleagues, I don't generally try to speak for all of you, but I think I can say thank you. So I appreciate it. Last week, with probably Director Strum's swan song, I did attend the Mid-Ohio Development Exchange Program at the East Market with some of our economic development staff. Basically learning about some of the tools that made the East Market possible. Talk was led by Brad DeHaze, the founder of Connect Real Estate, who led the development of the project, leveraging local, state, and federal economic development tools. So very interesting. Appreciate Director Strum, well, soon to be former Director Strum, for the invite for that. On Saturday, I did get to participate in the Walk in Our Boots 5K with my better half, Aileen. So thank you to the Legion and the VFW Post and all the volunteers who made it possible. Saturday was a lovely day out in the community. Great, nice to participate in the 5K. Swing by Upper Cup and get some tea and coffee. Swing by our new library, pick up some books. And then took in a softball game. My niece plays for Gahanna, so it was a fun day out in the community. Lots of stuff happening. Get out there and enjoy it. So thank you. That's it for me, Mr. President.
Thanks for not mentioning you caught me cheating on that one little turn.
You were a little shy. It's out of respect for fellow attorneys.
He was fast.
Look at
He
him.
told me, he said, you won't be able to walk as fast as me. He was fast.
Well, now we know why.
All right. Thank you for everything that my colleagues have said. Especially to Jeremy and Mr. Weaver, I think you mean the real secret to running council office, not the city, but at least the council office, and keeping us honest. Jeremy, you and Pam and your doings and with everybody, and now we have our new member of our council office, sorry. And so thank you for everything that you guys do. I too also participated in the American Legion's 5K, their first annual. I know from a lot of veterans that they intend to keep that going. So look for that next year. I didn't have the pleasure of really doing too much afterwards. I was a little sore, only because another former Gahanna resident, she inspired me to start running with her, and I did. And I enjoyed the run at the time, but I was very sorry afterwards that I did that. Ms. Barb Cox, thank you so much for your presentation. You happened to speak about something that's near and dear my heart. As a trained scientist, I used to, long before I became elected, I used to talk about climate change. In fact, last year I talked about climate change again in celebration of Earth Day. And also now I'd like to actually tell everybody that I've been accepted to graduate school at Ohio universities in their master's program in sustainability, security, and resilience. So hats off to you, and I'll probably be coming to you again. So thank you deeply for the mayor and the city attorney for going through the issue that we had, and thank you all to everybody here who actually got to witness us go through that discussion. But I think we did end up doing with an air of professionalism, and my hats to everybody included. So without much further ado, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Were you in middle school west?
No, we were at the Black Book Athletic.